My name is Michael Brennan, and I'm 74 years old. What I'm about to tell you happened last year at my granddaughter's wedding, but the story really begins 45 years ago when I married Jessica. They say the truth will set you free, but sometimes it just transfers the prison from one person to another. It was a perfect Saturday in June at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. My granddaughter Sarah was marrying her college sweetheart, Tom, and I'd spared no expense. 300 guests, a 12-piece band, flowers flown in from Ecuador, the works. Jessica had been planning it with Sarah for 18 months, every detail perfect, every moment choreographed. I'd been delayed at the office, even semi-retired. I couldn't fully let go of the investment firm I built from nothing. A crisis in the Hong Kong markets had kept me on calls until the reception was already in full swing. I'd missed the ceremony, watched it on Sarah's cousin's live stream from my office while barking orders at my team. Jessica would be furious, but she was used to my absences by now. 45 years of marriage had taught her that Brennan Capital came first, family second, even at family events. The Fairmont Ballroom was magnificent when I finally arrived. Jessica had outdone herself, gold and cream everywhere, orchids cascading from crystal vases, the band playing Sinatra. I stood in the entrance for a moment, taking it in, proud of what my money had bought, what my success had provided. I didn't see Jessica at our table. She was probably dancing. At 69, she still loved to dance, still moved like the college girl I'd met at Berkeley in 1976. I grabbed a scotch from the bar and started making rounds, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on Sarah's marriage, apologizing for missing the ceremony. "Where's Jessica?" asked Tom Hartley, one of my golf buddies. "Dancing, I'm sure." "You know Jessica." "That I do," he said with a strange smile. "She was cutting quite a rug earlier." I made my way toward the dance floor, weaving through tables of relatives and friends. The band was playing "The Way You Look Tonight," and the floor was packed with couples. That's when I saw her. Jessica was in the far corner of the dance floor, partially hidden by other dancers. She wore the midnight blue gown I'd bought her in Paris last year, the one that made her silver hair shine like moonlight. But it wasn't her dress that stopped me cold. She was pressed against a young man, couldn't be more than 35, dancing so close that light couldn't pass between them. His hand was low on her back, lower than appropriate, and her face was turned up to his, their lips inches apart. They were swaying to the music, lost in each other, oblivious to the world around them. My first thought was that the scotch must be stronger than usual. This couldn't be happening. Not Jessica. Not at our granddaughter's wedding. The young man spun her, and I got a clear look at his face. Chiseled features, dark hair, the kind of looks that belonged on magazine covers. But there was something familiar about him, something I couldn't quite place. I pulled out my phone, instinct taking over. 40 years in business had taught me to document everything, especially things that didn't make sense. I snapped several photos. Jessica's hand on his chest, his lips near her ear, the way she melted into him like she hadn't melted into me in 20 years. The song ended, but they didn't separate. Instead, he led her off the dance floor toward the terrace. She followed willingly, her hand in his, glancing around as if checking that no one was watching. But I was watching. And I was following. They went through the French doors onto the terrace overlooking the bay. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. The terrace was mostly empty, a few smokers at the far end, a couple admiring the view. Jessica and her companion had found a secluded corner behind a cluster of potted palms. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke volumes. She touched his face. He held her hands. They were having an intense conversation, and Jessica was crying. Not sad tears. I knew all her tears after 45 years. These were emotional, overwhelming tears. I walked closer, staying in the shadows. Their voices became clearer. "We can't keep doing this," Jessica was saying. "I know," the man replied. His voice was deep, cultured. "But seeing you tonight, at Sarah's wedding—" "Don't," Jessica interrupted. "Please don't make this harder." 20 years, Jess. 20 years of this secret. I can't do it anymore. 20 years? My mind reeled. They'd been having an affair for 20 years? Since Sarah was a child? I stepped out of the shadows. Jessica. She spun around, her face draining of color. Michael! I thought you were. At the office? I was. But I made it for the reception. Apparently just in time. The young man stepped forward, protective, which enraged me further. Mr. Brennan. I don't believe we've been introduced, I said coldly. Though apparently you know my wife quite well. Jessica was shaking. Michael, this isn't what you think. Isn't it? Because what I think is that I just watched my wife of 45 years dancing inappropriately with a man half her age, then sneaking off for a private moment. What I think is that I heard you mention 20 years of secrets. So tell me, Jessica, what exactly isn't this? The young man looked at Jessica. Tell him. Not here, she whispered. Not at Sarah's wedding. Tell me what? I demanded. Jessica looked between us, then seemed to make a decision. She straightened, wiped her tears, and said words that made no sense. Michael, this is Christopher. He's our son. I laughed. It was absurd. We have 2 children, Jessica. Kevin and Patricia. Not Christopher. No, she said quietly. We have 3 children. Christopher is Kevin's twin. The terrace spun. I gripped the railing to steady myself. That's impossible. It's not, Christopher said. I was born on March 15, 1987. 3 minutes after Kevin. You were in Tokyo on business. Mom had complications. And she made a decision that's haunted all of us ever since. I stared at this stranger claiming to be my son. Now that he'd said it, I could see it, Kevin's jaw, my father's nose, Jessica's eyes. But it was impossible. Impossible. If this is true, I said slowly, where have you been for 36 years? Jessica's tears were flowing freely now. With my sister. With Caroline. Caroline. Jessica's younger sister who lived in Seattle. Who'd been part of our lives forever. Who brought her son, Christopher, to family events occasionally, the nephew I'd barely paid attention to because I was always working. Caroline's Christopher. I said, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. He's not her son. He's ours. Yes, Jessica whispered. Why? The word came out as a roar. Several people on the terrace turned to look. Can we go somewhere private? Christopher asked. This isn't the place. This is exactly the place. I snarled. You 2 chose to have your reunion at my granddaughter's wedding. So explain. Now. Jessica looked around the terrace, then gestured to a small room off to the side, the bride's prep room, now empty. We filed in silently, this impossible trio, the betrayed husband, the lying wife, and the son who shouldn't exist. Start from the beginning, I commanded, sitting heavily in an ornate chair. And don't leave anything out. Jessica stood by the window, looking out at the lights of the city. You were in Tokyo, finalizing the Yamamoto merger. I was 38 weeks pregnant with what we thought was 1 baby. The ultrasounds back then weren't as good, they missed the 2nd baby. Impossible. Dr. Martinez would have. Dr. Martinez was in Europe. His substitute, Dr. Chen, delivered the babies. When Kevin was born, everyone was celebrating. Then I felt more contractions. 3 minutes later, Christopher arrived. Surprise twins. And your first thought was to give one away? No. Jessica turned to face me. My first thought was joy. Then Dr. Chen ran some tests because Christopher was smaller, having trouble breathing. That's when we discovered. She trailed off. Christopher picked up the story. I was born with a congenital heart defect. Hypoplastic left heart syndrome. I needed immediate surgery, then more surgeries over the years. The doctor said I might not survive. So you gave him to Caroline? I still couldn't process this. I didn't give him away, Jessica said fiercely. Caroline had just lost her baby, stillborn at 8 months. She was devastated, suicidal even. And I had 2 babies, one healthy and one who might die. You were in Tokyo for another 2 weeks. I had to make a decision. You had to call me. Your husband. The father. I tried. But you were in meetings. Your secretary said you couldn't be disturbed unless it was life or death. This was life or death. No, it was life or possible death. And I knew you, Michael. I knew what you'd do. You'd throw money at the problem, hire the best doctors, but you'd resent the sick child for taking attention from your perfect heir. You'd resent me for producing a defective child. That's not. Isn't it? Remember when Patricia had learning disabilities? You wanted to send her to boarding school so she wouldn't embarrass you in front of your business associates. The accusation stung because it held truth. I had suggested boarding school, though I'd framed it as getting her the best help. So you just decided? Unilaterally? Caroline was there. She'd come to help with the baby. When Christopher was born, when we learned about his condition, she held him and wouldn't let go. She said it was a sign. Her baby died so she could save mine. And you agreed to this insanity? I agreed to a temporary arrangement. Caroline would care for Christopher through his surgeries, and when he was stable, we'd tell you and figure out how to integrate him into our family. Temporary, I said flatly. 36 years is temporary? Christopher spoke up. I was never stable enough. 3 open-heart surgeries by age 5. Years of medications, monitoring, limitations. By the time I was healthy enough, I was 10 years old and had only known Caroline as my mother. But you knew, I said to Jessica. You knew and saw him regularly. At first, just to check on him. Medical appointments. Then as he grew, Caroline would bring him to family events as her son. You never questioned it. She was right. I hadn't. Caroline's kid was just background noise to me, like most children who weren't directly mine. When did you find out? I asked Christopher. When I was 16. I was sick again, needed another surgery. They needed complete family medical history. Caroline had to tell me the truth. And you've known for 20 years? Yes. Meeting at family gatherings, pretending to be nephew and aunt? It wasn't pretending. Jessica, Mom, she was always Aunt Jessica to me until I learned the truth. Then she became something else. Not quite mother, more than aunt. We've been navigating it ever since. I stood up, pacing the small room. So at every family gathering for 20 years, you two have been having secret mother-son moments while I sat there oblivious? It wasn't like that, Jessica said. Then what was it like? Enlighten me. Christopher pulled out his phone, scrolled through it, then showed me a photo. It was from Christmas 5 years ago. The whole family at Caroline's house in Seattle. I was in the corner, on my phone as usual. Jessica was by the tree, and next to her was Christopher, both laughing at something. In the photo, the resemblance was undeniable. This was the day I graduated from medical school, Christopher said. You congratulated me briefly, then took a call from Hong Kong. Mom, Jessica, spent the evening talking to me about my residency plans. She knew every detail of my journey through med school because she'd been following it secretly for years. Medical school, I repeated. I paid for Kevin to go to medical school. He dropped out. To go into your business, Christopher said quietly. Which he hated but did anyway because he wanted your approval. This stopped me cold. Kevin had joined Brennan Capital 8 years ago, and I'd been so proud. My son following in my footsteps. But Christopher was right. Kevin had loved medicine, had only quit when I'd convinced him the family business was more important. So you became the doctor Kevin wanted to be? I became a doctor because I'd spent so much of my childhood in hospitals. I wanted to help kids like me. Kids whose mothers gave them away? Michael, stop. Jessica pleaded. I didn't give him away. I shared him with my sister to save both their lives. And when were you planning to share this information with me? On your deathbed? I tried so many times. When Christopher turned 18, I almost told you. When he graduated college. When he got into medical school. But every time, something stopped me. Cowardice? Fear. Fear that you'd reject him. Fear that you'd divorce me. Fear that it would destroy our family. As opposed to this? Finding out at Sarah's wedding that my wife has been lying to me for 36 years? 34 years. Christopher corrected. She didn't lie the first 2 years. She just delayed the truth. You're defending her? I'm trying to explain. I grew up loved, cared for, wanted. Caroline was a wonderful mother. I had a good childhood despite the health issues. The only thing missing was you. Because your mother decided I didn't deserve to know you existed. Because she thought you'd reject me for being imperfect. The words hung in the air. We all knew there was truth in them. I built my life on perfection, perfect business, perfect family, perfect image. A sick child didn't fit the narrative. The dancing, I said suddenly. Tonight. You were dancing like lovers. Jessica's face flamed. We were dancing like mother and son who rarely get to be mother and son in public. It was Sarah's wedding, family all around, and for once we just let ourselves be what we are. It didn't look maternal. You see what you expect to see, Michael. You expected betrayal, so that's what you saw. But look again. She took my phone, pulled up the photos I'd taken. Look at my face. What do you really see? I looked. Without the lens of assumed infidelity, I could see it, the maternal joy, the sadness, the desperate love of a mother for a child she'd had to hide. 20 years, I said. He said 20 years of secrets. Since he found out the truth. These 20 years have been agony, Michael. Seeing him, loving him, but not being able to claim him. Watching you ignore him at family events. Hearing you praise Kevin for achievements Christopher had surpassed. Do you know he graduated summa cum laude? Do you know he's chief resident at Seattle Children's Hospital? Do you know he's saved dozens of children with the same condition he had? I didn't know any of that. Caroline's kid had been peripheral to my life. What about Caroline? I asked. Where is she in all this? Here, Christopher said. She's at the wedding. She's the only mother I've ever known, and that won't change. But Jessica, she's my mother too. We've been trying to figure out how to be family without destroying the family we already had. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sarah's voice called out, Grandpa? Are you in there? They're about to cut the cake. Give us a minute, sweetheart. I managed to say normally. Okay, but hurry. And if you see Grandma, tell her we're looking for her too. Footsteps retreated. My granddaughter blissfully unaware that her family was imploding during her wedding. We have to go back out there, Jessica said. Pretend everything's normal. Normal? I laughed bitterly. Nothing will ever be normal again. Please, Michael. For Sarah. Don't ruin her wedding. You mean the way you've ruined our marriage? Christopher stepped forward. Mr. Brennan, Dad. Don't call me that. He flinched but continued. This doesn't have to destroy anything. I'm not asking to be acknowledged as your son. I'm not asking for money or inheritance or anything. I wanted you to know I exist. Why now? Why tonight? Because I'm getting married next month, he said quietly. And I wanted to invite you. As my father, not my uncle. This kept getting worse. You're engaged? For 2 years. Her name is Amy. She's a pediatric nurse. She knows everything, about you, about the situation. She encouraged me to finally tell you. 2 years? I repeated. Jessica, you've known he was getting married for 2 years? She nodded miserably. Were you planning to attend? As his aunt? I didn't know what else to do. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. In one night, my understanding of my entire life had shattered. My wife was a liar. I had a son I'd never known. My family was a carefully constructed fiction. Kevin and Patricia, I said. Do they know? No, Jessica said quickly. We couldn't tell them without telling you first. Caroline's husband, did he know? Christopher answered. He died when I was 2. Cancer. He never knew the truth. So Caroline had raised my son alone, while I'd barely noticed her struggles. I'd written checks for birthday and Christmas, shown up at major events when my schedule allowed, but I'd never really seen them. The medical bills? I said suddenly. Who paid for all your surgeries? Insurance covered some. Caroline mortgaged her house for the rest. Jessica helped when she could without you noticing. Without me noticing. I turned to Jessica. How much? Over the years? About $300,000. $300,000, and I never noticed? You never looked closely at my personal accounts. Trust, you said? Marriage is built on trust. The irony was suffocating. My phone buzzed. Kevin texting. Dad, where are you? Sarah's looking for you and Mom. My son. My other son. Who didn't know he had a twin brother? I need air, I said, standing. Michael, we have to go back to the reception. Jessica pleaded. You go. Smile. Play the perfect grandmother. You're good at pretending. I left the room, but instead of returning to the reception, I went to the parking garage. I sat in my Tesla, staring at nothing, trying to process 36 years of deception. My phone rang. Caroline. I answered. You knew. All this time you knew? Michael. Her voice was soft, careful. I'm sorry. Sorry? You helped steal my son, and you're sorry? I didn't steal him. I saved him. Jessica saved him by giving him to someone who could focus solely on his needs. You would have seen him as a problem to solve, not a child to love. You don't know that. Don't I? Remember when Jessica had her miscarriage before Kevin? You were relieved because the pregnancy was interfering with your IPO timeline. I wanted to deny it, but couldn't. I had been relieved, though I'd hidden it. That's different. Is it? You've always put business first, Michael. It's who you are. It's what made you successful. But it also made Jessica's choice necessary. I hung up on Caroline and sat in the parking garage for another 20 minutes, trying to decide what to do. Finally, duty won. Sarah deserved to have her grandfather at her wedding, even if that grandfather's life was falling apart. I returned to the ballroom just as they were cutting the cake. Jessica stood next to Sarah, playing the perfect grandmother, but I could see the strain around her eyes. Christopher was nowhere to be seen, probably wise enough to make himself scarce. Kevin approached me with his wife Linda and their 2 kids. Dad, where were you? We've been looking everywhere. I looked at my son, one of my sons, apparently. 36 years old, successful in the business I'd built, unhappy in ways I'd refused to see. How different would his life have been if he'd known he had a twin? If he'd had someone to share the burden of being Michael Brennan's son? Just needed some air, I said. You okay? You look pale. Fine. Just tired. Patricia joined us, 8 months pregnant with her first child. My daughter, who I'd wanted to hide away at boarding school when her learning disabilities became apparent. Jessica had fought me on that, won that battle. How many other battles had she fought that I didn't even know about? Dad, have you seen Christopher around? Patricia asked. And Caroline's son? I wanted to introduce him to my husband. They're both in medicine. The irony was a knife. My daughter wanted to introduce her husband to her brother, not knowing they were siblings. I think he stepped out. I managed. The rest of the reception was torture. Speeches about family, about truth, about the foundations of marriage. Sarah's new husband Tom talking about honesty being the cornerstone of their relationship. Kevin toasting to family traditions being passed down through generations. All of it landing like punches to my gut. Jessica and I didn't speak, didn't make eye contact. We'd been married long enough to fake unity without interaction. But others noticed. Tom Hartley pulled me aside. Everything okay with you and Jessica? You two seem off. Just tired. I repeated what was becoming my mantra. You sure? Because earlier, when she was dancing with that young man. Tom, leave it. He backed off, but the damage was done. Others had noticed. By tomorrow, the gossip would start. The perfect Brennan marriage showing cracks. At 11, Sarah and Tom made their grand exit in a shower of rose petals. The reception began winding down. Jessica appeared at my elbow. We need to go home and talk. There's nothing to talk about. Michael, please. Let me explain properly. Not here, not in pieces, but the whole story. 36 years of story? That should take a while. Kevin approached before she could respond. Mom, Dad, Linda and I want to talk to you about something. Not tonight, I said quickly. It's important. We're pregnant again, but there are complications. The doctor says. Kevin, Linda interrupted. Maybe this isn't the time. I looked at my son's worried face. What kind of complications? The baby has a heart defect. Hypoplastic left heart syndrome. The doctor says it's treatable now, but 20 years ago it would have been fatal. The universe had a sick sense of humor. The same condition Christopher had been born with. Jessica gasped. Kevin, It's hereditary, Kevin continued. But neither of our families have any history of it. The doctors are confused. I looked at Jessica. Her face was white. This was it. The truth would have to come out now. Kevin's baby had the condition because Kevin's twin had it. Genetics didn't lie, even when mothers did. We need to talk, I said to Kevin. All of us. Tomorrow. Come to the house at noon. Dad, what's going on? You're scaring me. Tomorrow. I repeated, then walked away. I found Christopher in the hotel bar, nursing a whiskey. Without asking, I sat down next to him. Kevin's baby has your condition, I said. He nodded. I heard. Linda found me, asked if I knew anything about hereditary heart conditions since I'm in pediatrics. What did you tell her? That they should get comprehensive genetic testing done. That the condition is treatable now with excellent outcomes. You didn't tell her the truth? That's not my truth to tell. I didn't go home. I checked into a room at the Fairmont, ignoring Jessica's 17 calls and 43 texts. I needed space to think, to process, to figure out what came next. At 2 a.m., there was a knock on my door. I assumed it was Jessica, but it was Caroline. How did you find me? The front desk knows me. I've been organizing events here for 20 years. I let her in. My sister-in-law, the woman who'd raised my son. She looked older than her 67 years, worn down by secrets. I brought something, she said, pulling out a thick photo album. I thought you should see these. She opened it. The first photo was from the hospital, 2 newborns in adjacent bassinets. Kevin and Christopher. Identical. Jessica took this before she made the decision, Caroline said. She wanted proof they existed together, even if briefly. The next photos chronicled Christopher's childhood. First surgery at 3 days old. Recovery. Birthday parties with just Caroline and him. Christmas mornings. School plays. Science fairs. Graduation. Medical school white coat ceremony. This was his life, Caroline said. The life I gave him because Jessica trusted me with her most precious secret. Her most precious lie. Her most impossible choice. Michael, you weren't there. You didn't see her sobbing over Christopher's bassinet, terrified he'd die. You didn't see her relief when I offered to help. You didn't see her sneak into my house at midnight to hold him when he was recovering from surgery. Because no one told me. Would you have come home from Tokyo? From London? From Shanghai? How many of Kevin and Patricia's events did you miss for business? Too many. Far too many. That's different. I was building something. For them. You were building something for you. They were just beneficiaries. Caroline turned to a photo from Christopher's 5th birthday. Jessica was there, in the background, watching him blow out candles. She came to everything she could without raising suspicion. School plays when you were traveling. Soccer games on Saturday mornings when you golfed. She's been his mother from a distance his entire life. And you? What were you? His mother up close. The one who held him during seizures. Who slept in hospital chairs. Who fought insurance companies. Who learned to read EKGs and administer medications. You never married again. How could I? I was raising a sick child who wasn't legally mine. What man would take that on? The weight of it hit me. Caroline had given up her life to raise my son while I'd barely acknowledged her sacrifice. Why? I asked. Why did you agree to it? Because I'd just lost my baby. Because Jessica was drowning and you were absent. Because Christopher needed someone whose whole world could revolve around him. Because families sometimes require impossible sacrifices. She showed me more photos. Christopher at 16, the day he learned the truth. His face was a study in shock and betrayal, much like mine tonight. He didn't speak to Jessica for 6 months, Caroline said. Or to me. He felt like his whole life was a lie. But eventually he understood. Love isn't always simple. Family isn't always traditional. Truth isn't always kind. And now? Now he loves us both. I'm Mom. Jessica is also Mom, just differently. He needed you to know so he could stop pretending at family gatherings. The weight of secrets was crushing him. The wedding invitation, he really wants me there? He wants his father there. Whether that's you or just Michael Brennan, successful businessman, depends on what you decide. She stood to leave, but turned at the door. Jessica gave me purpose when I had none. Christopher gave me joy when I thought I'd never smile again. Yes, it was built on a lie, but it was also built on love. Sometimes those things coexist. I didn't sleep. I sat with Caroline's photo album, seeing 36 years of my son's life that I'd missed. When dawn broke over the bay, I finally understood the full weight of Jessica's choice and my own failures that had necessitated it. My phone had over 100 notifications. Messages from Kevin, Patricia, Jessica, even Christopher. The family group chat was active, people sharing wedding photos, unaware that the family they were celebrating was built on a fundamental deception. At 9, I called my lawyer, Paul Steinberg. Michael, it's Sunday morning. I need to know about inheritance law. If a child was raised by someone else but is biologically mine, what are their rights? Is this hypothetical? No. Paul was silent for a moment. Biological children have inheritance rights regardless of who raised them, unless specifically excluded in a will. Is there something you need to tell me? Yes, but not yet. Draw up papers for a trust. 3 beneficiaries, equal shares. Kevin and Patricia and Christopher Wilson. Who is my son? Draw up the papers, Paul. After I hung up, I sat looking at the San Francisco skyline. 45 years of building an empire, and I'd missed building a family. The irony was perfect. I had more money than I could ever spend and a son I'd never known existed. Jessica texted again. The children will be here at noon. Please come home. The children. All 3 of them? Or just the 2 who thought they were our only offspring? I checked out and drove home to Hillsborough. Our house, 8,000 square feet of perfection overlooking the bay, had never felt more empty. Jessica was in the kitchen, looking haggard. She'd aged years overnight. Did you sleep? I asked. No. Did you? No. We stood there, 45 years of marriage reduced to exhausted monosyllables. Christopher's here, she said. In the guest house. Caroline too. I thought, when we tell Kevin and Patricia, they should be here. You invited them without asking me? They're family, Michael. They've always been family. You just didn't know it. The doorbell rang. Kevin and Linda. Early, anxious. Patricia and her husband Robert arrived minutes later. My children gathered in the living room where we'd celebrated so many Christmases, unaware that their family was about to expand and fracture simultaneously. Before we talk about the baby, Kevin said, what's going on? You both look terrible. I looked at Jessica. She nodded. There's something we need to tell you, I began. About our family. About Christopher. Aunt Caroline's son? Patricia asked, confused. No, I said. Not Caroline's son. Ours. The silence was deafening. That's not funny, Dad, Kevin said. It's not a joke. Christopher is your brother. Your twin brother. Kevin stood up so fast his chair fell backward. What? Jessica took over, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. She told them everything: the surprise twin birth, the heart condition, the impossible choice, the decades of deception. Patricia was sobbing. Kevin was pacing, running his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as my own. You gave away my brother? Kevin's voice was raw. I had a twin, and you gave him away? To save his life, Jessica said. To save your perfect image. Kevin shot back, looking at me. Couldn't have a sick kid messing up the Brennan family brand, could you, Dad? I didn't know. Because Mom knew you'd react badly. God, it all makes sense now. Why Aunt Caroline was always around. Why Mom volunteered at Seattle Children's Hospital. Why Christopher looked familiar. He's my fucking twin. Linda was trying to calm Kevin down, but he was beyond consolation. Patricia had gone silent, staring at nothing, processing. Robert looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Where is he? Kevin demanded. Where's Christopher? In the guest house, Jessica said quietly. Kevin stormed out. We heard the back door slam. Through the window, I could see him crossing the garden toward the guest house where Caroline had often stayed during visits. Should we follow? Robert asked. Let them meet, I said. Properly this time. Patricia finally spoke. Every family gathering. Every holiday. He was there, and we didn't know. We wanted to tell you. Jessica started. When? When were you planning to tell us? At your funeral? His? Were we supposed to find out from a DNA test someday? We were trying to protect everyone, Jessica said. From what? From knowing we had a brother? From him knowing he had siblings? Do you have any idea what you've stolen from us? She stood up, shaking. I need air. Robert followed her out to the terrace. Linda, Jessica, and I sat in awful silence. The baby, Linda finally said. Our baby has the same condition because Kevin is a twin. There's genetic history we didn't know about. Christopher is a pediatric cardiac specialist, Jessica said. He can help. He knows the best surgeons, the latest treatments. How convenient, Linda said coldly. The secret brother is exactly the expert we need. Through the window, we could see Kevin and Christopher in the guest house garden. They were standing face to face, mirror images separated by 36 years of lies. Caroline stood to the side, watching her two sons, one she'd raised, one she'd watched from afar. I've already called my lawyer, I announced. Christopher will be included in all inheritance documents. Equal shares with Kevin and Patricia. Jessica looked surprised. Michael. He's my son. He's been my son for 36 years, whether I knew it or not. He deserves what his siblings have. He doesn't want money, Jessica said. He just wanted acknowledgement. Well, he's getting both. Kevin and Christopher were sitting now, on the garden bench where Jessica liked to read. They were talking, gesturing. At one point, Kevin pulled out his phone, probably showing pictures. Of his kids? His life? The childhood Christopher had missed? Patricia returned, calmer but still shattered. I want to meet him. Properly. As my brother. He's getting married next month, I said. He wanted to invite us. As family, not as distant relatives. We'll be there, Patricia said firmly. All of us. She looked at me pointedly. I nodded. Dad, she said, I understand why Mom did what she did. The world was different in 1987. Single mothers were judged. Sick babies were hidden. You were different then too. Worse, you mean? More rigid. Less flexible. You've softened over the years, especially since the grandchildren. But back then? You would have seen Christopher as a failure. A flaw in your perfect plan. She was right. In 1987, I was conquering the world, building Brennan Capital into a powerhouse. A sick child would have been an inconvenience, a distraction, possibly a shame. But Mom, Patricia continued, turning to Jessica, you should have told us when we were adults. We deserved to know our brother. I wanted to. So many times. But the longer the secret went, the harder it became. And Christopher had a life, a family that loved him. I didn't want to disrupt that. That wasn't just your choice to make. Kevin returned with Christopher and Caroline. The 5 of us, my 3 children, stood in the same room for the first time knowing they were siblings. This is weird, Kevin said. Extremely weird. Christopher agreed. They looked at each other, then unexpectedly, Kevin laughed. You got the medical degree. I got stuck with the MBA. You got the healthy heart. I got the broken one that led to the medical degree. You got Caroline. I got him. Kevin gestured at me. That might be a draw, Christopher said, and even I had to smile at that. We spent the rest of Sunday in a surreal family reunion. Christopher showed us photos of his life, his fiancée Amy, his work at the hospital, the children he'd saved. Kevin and Patricia shared their own lives, filling in gaps for a brother who'd been present but invisible their whole lives. Caroline mostly watched, occasionally adding context. Remember when Christopher won the science fair in 8th grade? Jessica was there, in the back. She cried when they announced his name. I was at that science fair, Kevin said suddenly. My school competed against his. We were in the same room, competing against each other, and didn't know we were brothers. These revelations came in waves. Moments where their lives had intersected without their knowledge. The soccer tournament where their teams played each other. The SAT test in the same location. Kevin's medical school interview at the same school Christopher attended, Kevin failing to get in, not knowing his twin was already there. We could have helped each other, Patricia said. When you were sick, we could have been there. You were there, Christopher said. You just didn't know why you were there. Every family gathering at Caroline's, you played with me. Kevin, you taught me to throw a football when I was 8. I remember that, Kevin said, wonder in his voice. You were so small. I was worried about hurting you. You were gentle. You've always been gentle, despite trying to be like him. Christopher nodded toward me. The comment stung because it was accurate. Kevin had spent his life trying to be me, tough, driven, ruthless in business. But his nature was softer, kinder. More like Jessica. What happens now? Linda asked practically. With the family, I mean. We tell the truth, I said. To everyone. No more secrets. Dad, that could hurt your business reputation, Kevin pointed out. Let it. I'm 74. What matters more, what people think of Brennan Capital or having an honest family for whatever years I have left? Jessica looked at me with something like hope. You mean that? I've lost 36 years with my son. I'm not losing any more to preserve a lie. The wedding, Christopher said. You'll really come? If you'll have me. As my father? As your father? Christopher's eyes filled with tears. I used to imagine what it would be like. Having you know. Having you choose me. I'm choosing you now. Because you found out. Not because you wanted to. The truth of it sat heavy between us. Would I ever have chosen to know Christopher if the choice hadn't been forced on me? Would Jessica ever have told me if circumstances hadn't demanded it? Does it matter? Caroline asked. The truth is out now. You can mourn the past or build a future. Those are the only choices. She was right, but it didn't make it easier. Trust, once shattered, doesn't simply reform. It has to be rebuilt, piece by painful piece. That evening, as everyone prepared to leave, Kevin pulled me aside. Dad, I need to ask you something. If you'd known about Christopher from the beginning, would you have let Caroline raise him? I wanted to lie, to say I would have been the perfect father to both boys. But we'd had enough lies. Probably, I admitted. I wasn't a good father then. I was barely present for you and Patricia. Adding a sick child would have made me worse, not better. So Mom made the right choice? She made an impossible choice. Right or wrong doesn't apply. Kevin nodded. I'm angry. At both of you. But I also understand. And I'm glad Christopher survived, even if it meant growing up apart from us. You're a better man than I am, Kevin. I had a better mother than you did. It was true. Jessica, for all her lies, had been present. She'd raised our children, all three of them, in her way. She'd been the parent while I'd been the provider. As Christopher was leaving, he stopped at the door. Mr. Brennan, Dad, there's something else you should know. More secrets? No. The opposite. Amy's pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather again. And this time, you'll know from the beginning. Another grandchild. From the son I just met. Congratulations. I managed. The baby's due in January. We're hoping you'll be there. I'll be there. After everyone left, Jessica and I stood in our empty house, surrounded by the debris of revelation. What happens to us? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I love you, but I don't trust you. I understand your choice, but I can't forgive the decades of deception. I want to move forward, but I don't know how. Therapy? She suggested. Maybe. Or maybe we just take it one day at a time. One truth at a time. No more lies, she promised. No more lies, I agreed. But even as I said it, I wondered what other secrets might be hiding in the corners of our 45-year marriage. And whether I really wanted to know them all. The month between Sarah's wedding and Christopher's passed in a blur of awkward family dinners and careful reconciliation. Jessica and I were living like polite strangers in the same house, cordial but distant, sharing space but not intimacy. Christopher had returned to Seattle but called regularly, trying to build a relationship with 36 years of absence to overcome. Kevin struggled the most, wrestling with the twin bond that had been severed at birth. He'd started therapy, something I'd once considered weakness but now understood as necessity. 2 weeks before Christopher's wedding, we received the official invitation. Dr. Christopher Wilson and Ms. Amy Chun request the honor of your presence. But handwritten at the bottom. We'd be honored to have my father, Michael Brennan, and my family there to celebrate with us. My family? He was claiming us, publicly, despite everything. Jessica found me studying the invitation in my office. We need to decide about the rehearsal dinner. What about it? Traditionally, the groom's parents host it. Caroline's been his parent. But you're his father. And we can afford. It's not about money, Jessica. It's about not stealing any more moments from Caroline. She raised him. She gets the honors. Jessica sat down across from my desk, the same place where clients usually sat. It felt appropriate. We were negotiating our relationship like a business deal now. I've been thinking about something, Caroline said. She began. About impossible choices. I made one 36 years ago. But you're making one now, whether to be Christopher's father or just Michael Brennan who happens to share DNA with him. I'm trying. No, you're not. You're going through the motions. Attending dinners, making phone calls, including him in the will. But you're not actually letting him in. How can I? I don't know him. Then get to know him. Fly to Seattle. Spend time with him without the buffer of the whole family. Be his father, not his financial benefactor. She was right. I'd been treating Christopher like a business obligation, checking boxes, fulfilling requirements, but not actually engaging. Come with me, I said impulsively. To Seattle? Yes. This weekend. We'll visit Christopher and Amy. See his life. Meet him on his territory. Together? We're still married, aren't we? It was a question more than a statement, but she nodded. That weekend, we flew to Seattle. Christopher picked us up at the airport alone. The drive to his house was quiet, all of us navigating the strange new dynamics. His home was modest, a craftsman in Wallingford he'd bought with Amy. Nothing like the mansion he could have grown up in had things been different. But it was warm, lived in, real. Amy greeted us at the door. She was lovely, Chinese-American, pediatric nurse, 7 months pregnant and glowing. She hugged Jessica immediately, then turned to me. Mr. Brennan, I've heard so much about you. I hope not all bad. Complicated, she said diplomatically. But Christopher says all the best families are complicated. We had dinner in their small dining room. Christopher had cooked, something Kevin never did, despite Jessica's attempts to teach him. This is delicious, I said, meaning it. Mom taught me, Christopher said, then caught himself. Caroline, I mean. She's your mom, Jessica said firmly. She earned that title. I'm just. She trailed off. You're my mother too, Christopher said. Biology and choice. I got both. After dinner, Christopher showed me his study. The walls were covered with diplomas, certifications, photos from medical missions. But what caught my eye was a framed photo on his desk, the one from the hospital, 2 newborns side by side. Kevin and Christopher, together for the only time until now. Jessica gave it to me when I turned 18, he said. After I learned the truth. It was the only proof I had that we'd ever been together. I'm sorry, I said, the words inadequate but necessary. For what specifically? For not being there. For being the kind of man Jessica couldn't trust with the truth. For missing 36 years of your life. But you didn't know. I should have known. A good father would have sensed something. A good husband would have noticed his wife's pain. I was neither. Christopher was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Growing up, I used to watch you at family gatherings. You were this distant, powerful figure. And Jessica's husband, who was always on his phone, always leaving early for business. I was jealous of Kevin and Patricia, but also grateful I didn't have to compete for your attention. And now? Now I see you're just a man who made choices. Some good, some bad. Like all of us. The rehearsal dinner was at Caroline's house, the house where Christopher grew up, where my son had been raised without me. It was a modest colonial in Ballard, nothing fancy, but full of warmth I'd never achieved in our mansion. Caroline had invited both families, hers and ours. Amy's parents were there, confused but polite about the complicated family dynamics. Kevin came with Linda and their kids. Patricia with Robert. Everyone trying to pretend this was normal, that we hadn't just discovered a 36-year secret. During cocktails, I found myself standing with Caroline on the back deck, looking at a swing set in the yard. Christopher loved that swing, she said. Even after his surgeries, when he could barely walk, he'd beg me to push him on it. You gave him a good childhood. I gave him the only childhood I could. Different from what you would have provided, but not necessarily better or worse. It was better, I said. He's kind, compassionate, dedicated to helping others. I would have made him hard, competitive, probably miserable. You don't know that. Look at Kevin. Successful but unfulfilled. That would have been Christopher, minus the successful if his health had interfered with my plans. Caroline touched my arm. Michael, you need to forgive yourself. And Jessica. This anger you're carrying, it's poison. How do I forgive 45 years of lies? By recognizing they were 45 years of love, too. Jessica loved you enough to protect you from a choice you weren't equipped to make. She loved Christopher enough to give him to someone who could give him what he needed. She loved all three children enough to maintain an impossible balance for decades. Before I could respond, Kevin appeared. Dad, Christopher wants to talk to you. Privately. I found Christopher in Caroline's study, a small room lined with medical books and photos of him at various ages. I wanted to give you this, he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a photo, Christopher in his white coat at his medical school graduation, standing where a father might stand if he'd had one. I saved a space for you, he said, even though I didn't know if you'd ever fill it. Christopher, I don't need you to be my dad retroactively. We can't get back those 36 years. But we have whatever time is left. However many years you have, I'd like you to be my father for them. I don't know how to be your father. I barely knew how to be Kevin and Patricia's. Then we'll figure it out together. At dinner, Caroline asked me to give a toast. I stood, looking at this assembled group, my fractured, reconstructed, impossible family. 36 years ago, I began. Choices were made that shaped all our lives. Some of those choices were wrong. Some were necessary. All were made from love, even if that love was imperfect. Christopher, you grew up without me, but you had Caroline, who gave you what I couldn't have. Kevin and Patricia, you grew up without your brother, but you had each other and parents who, despite our failures, loved you completely. Amy, you're entering a complicated family, but it's a family that knows how to survive impossible things. Tomorrow, we celebrate not just a wedding, but a reunion 36 years in the making. Christopher was crying. Jessica was crying. Hell, I was crying. Kevin stood up. My turn. Christopher, we lost 36 years as brothers. But we're twins, which means we were together for 9 months before that. Same womb, same heartbeat, same beginning. The middle got screwed up, but maybe we can get the ending right. Christopher's wedding was small, maybe 50 people in a waterfront venue. Nothing like Sarah's grand affair, but somehow more genuine. I sat in the front row, where fathers sit, Caroline on one side, Jessica on the other. When the officiant asked, "Who gives this man to be married?" Caroline and I both stood. "His mother and his father do," we said in unison. It wasn't traditional, but nothing about our family was. Amy was radiant, Christopher handsome. But what struck me most was how he kept looking at our section, checking that we were there, that we were staying, that this wasn't another secret to be kept. During the reception, I danced with Jessica for the first time since Sarah's wedding. The same song was playing. "The Way You Look Tonight." But everything was different. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "Sometimes." "Do you love me?" "Always." "That's contradictory." "Welcome to our marriage." She laughed sadly. "Michael, I need to tell you something else." My body tensed. "No more secrets, Jessica. I can't take any more. Not a secret. A truth. I'm sick." I stopped dancing. "What?" "The stress of keeping this secret for so long, it's taken a toll." My heart, ironically. Not as bad as Christopher's was, but I need surgery. When? Next month. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you. Were you going to tell me at all? Yes. I promised no more lies, remember? We resumed dancing, but everything felt fragile now. What kind of surgery? Valve replacement. Routine, they say, but at my age. Our age? I corrected. We're the same age, Jessica. Yes, but you haven't been carrying this weight for 36 years. The song ended. Christopher and Amy were cutting their cake. Normal wedding things, but nothing felt normal anymore. Later, I found myself outside with Kevin and Christopher. My sons together. "Mom told you?" Kevin asked. I nodded. "She told us last week. Christopher's been consulting with the cardiac surgeons. The irony isn't lost on me," Christopher said. "I'm finally in a position to help the mother who gave me away to save my life." "Will you do the surgery?" "No. Conflict of interest. But I'll make sure she has the best. She gave you away but saved your life. Now you'll save hers, Kevin observed. Circular justice, Christopher said. A month later, we sat in another hospital waiting room. Christopher, Kevin, Patricia, Caroline, and I, waiting while Jessica underwent heart surgery. The same hospital where Christopher worked, where he'd insisted she be treated. She'll be fine, Christopher kept saying, but I could see his medical knowledge was a curse now. He knew all the things that could go wrong. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 hours of pacing, of terrible coffee, of Caroline telling stories about Christopher's childhood that we'd missed. Remember when you won the science fair? She asked him. You mean when Kevin and I both competed and I won? Kevin laughed. I came in third. Lost to my own twin and didn't know it. You were robbed, Christopher said. Your project was better. No, it wasn't. You were always smarter. Not smarter. Just more motivated. I had to prove I deserved to exist. The words hung heavy. Patricia took Christopher's hand. You never had to prove that, she said. Didn't I? The sick baby who was given away. I've been trying to prove my worth my entire life. Join the club, Kevin said. I've been trying to prove myself to Dad forever. They looked at me. 3 children, all damaged by my distance in different ways. You never had to prove anything to me, I said. Really? Kevin challenged. Then why did I give up medicine for business? Because I pressured you. Because I wanted your approval. Which I never really got, even after joining the firm. He was right. I'd taken his sacrifice for granted, assumed he wanted what I wanted. I'm sorry, I said. To all of you. I was so busy building something to leave you that I forgot to actually be with you. Dr. Patel, Christopher's colleague, appeared. The surgery went well. She's in recovery. You can see her in an hour. Relief flooded through me. Jessica would survive. We'd have time to figure out what came next. When we finally saw her, she looked small and fragile in the hospital bed. But she was awake, alive. The gang's all here, she said weakly. All your children, I said. All 3 of them. She smiled. And their father. That night, I stayed in her hospital room. The nurses brought in a cot, and I lay there listening to her breathe, to the machines monitoring her repaired heart. Michael? She whispered in the darkness. I'm here. I'm sorry. For everything. I know. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. That's enough, she said. That's more than enough. It's been a year since Sarah's wedding, since the dance that changed everything. Jessica recovered from her surgery. Christopher's baby was born, a healthy girl they named Caroline, after the woman who raised him. Kevin's son was born too, the heart condition managed successfully by the team Christopher assembled. We're different now, all of us. The truth has rearranged us into something new, not better or worse, just honest. Jessica and I are still together, though together means something different now. We sold the Hillsborough mansion, bought something smaller in the city. The profits went into a foundation for children with heart conditions, run jointly by Christopher and Kevin, the brothers finally working together. Kevin left Brennan Capital. He's back in medicine, getting his MD at 47. Better late than never, he says, and Christopher tutors him when he struggles. Patricia wrote a book about family secrets and their impact across generations. It's being published next year. She interviewed all of us, even Caroline, creating a narrative from everyone's perspective. I retired. Fully this time. Brennan Capital runs without me while I learn to be present for the family I nearly missed. We have Sunday dinners now, all of us. Christopher and Amy drive down from Seattle with baby Caroline. Kevin and Linda bring their boys. Patricia and Robert, expecting their second child. Caroline joins us, the aunt-mother-grandmother who held us all together with her sacrifice. Last week, going through old boxes in the garage, I found a video from 1987. Jessica had filmed Kevin's first birthday party. But in the background, barely visible, was a second high chair. Empty. Waiting for the twin who wasn't there. I showed it to Christopher. He studied it for a long moment. "I would have been in the hospital then," he said. "Second surgery. You should have been here." "No," he said firmly. "I should have been where I could survive." And I was. He was right. The past was immutable. We could only change the future. Tonight, we're having another party, Christopher and Amy's anniversary. This time, when I see Jessica dancing with Christopher, I'll know exactly what I'm seeing. A mother dancing with the son she saved by giving him away, the son who saved her by coming back. The photo I took at Sarah's wedding, Jessica pressed against the young man I thought was her lover, sits on our mantel now. But I see it differently. Not evidence of betrayal, but of love so deep it survived 36 years of separation. Kevin and Christopher have developed their own relationship, weekly video calls, medical consultations, the gradual building of a brotherhood that should have existed from birth. They're planning to open a clinic together, focusing on pediatric cardiac care. The twins, finally united in purpose. Patricia includes Christopher naturally now, referring to "my brothers," without hesitation. She's made Amy her close friend, their pregnancies overlapping, sharing the experience of bringing new life into our complicated family. As for Jessica and me, we're learning. Every day, we choose to stay together, to rebuild trust word by word, action by action. She volunteers at the cardiac unit where Christopher works. I drive her there, wait during her shift, drive her home. Simple acts of presence I should have mastered decades ago. "Do you regret it?" I asked her recently. "The choice you made?" "I regret that it was necessary," she said. "I regret that you and Christopher lost 36 years. I regret the pain it caused Kevin and Patricia. But regret the actual choice? No. Christopher lived because of that choice. Kevin and Patricia had a father who could focus on them because of that choice. You built your empire without the distraction of a sick child because of that choice. And you? I had 3 children who lived, a husband who stayed even after learning the truth, and a sister who became a mother because of me. Not perfect outcomes, but real ones. She was right. Life isn't about perfect outcomes, it's about making impossible choices and living with the consequences, about finding grace in the aftermath of revelation, about building something new from the ruins of what you thought you knew. The dance at Sarah's wedding, that moment when I thought my marriage was ending, was actually the beginning of something harder but more honest. We're still dancing, all of us, to a complicated rhythm of truth and consequences, of love despite betrayal, of family despite fracture. Christopher often says that hearts can be repaired. He's seen it countless times in surgery. The scar tissue might change how they beat, but they still beat. Our family is like that now, scarred but beating, damaged but alive, forever changed but still here. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's everything.